morning, and thank you for coming. What I'm going to do, I mean, three of us are going to give us a sense of this project. That's Professor deSouza, who's the key person, principal investigator of this project, Professor Lakshmi Subramanian, and myself. What I'm going to do is provide a brief overview so that we orient ourselves and understand what this issue is about. And I have three parts that I want to cover, just three parts, and I want to do it fairly quickly. The first part is to understand that the Mhadei is more than a river, which is that the Mhadei is more than a river. It's Goa's largest river basin, actually, and there are a few things I want to mention. This is one of the first things that struck us. Some of us who didn't realize this only until looking at it, we realize all the time we're thinking about it as a river, but it's a large basin and it has serious implications for everyone. The second is, what is this controversy about? What is this diversion about? And that's the second part where I call it the bleeding of the Mhadei, because there are a number of proposed diversions, it's not just one. And the third part is slightly different. And we have uncovered in the course of this work certain contradictory positions by the government of Goa. And I want to place them here for us to think about these positions as well. Okay. So, and I want to do this with maps, and Arun Ganesh, who is supposed to join us, is the key person using a web engine that we have called Armchair to develop these maps, and he will be here shortly, so I'm very grateful. We are very grateful to him for helping us with these maps. So this is a different view of the Mhadei. The Mhadei as a basin. The largest, there are 9 river basins in Goa, just to orient ourselves. This is the largest. The area that you're looking at is about 2,000 square kilometers that the basin, different river systems drain into this basin. Okay, so in some way this is so large. And it has parts of Karnataka and Goa, but 78% of the basin falls in Goa. Karnataka has 18%, Maharashtra has 4%. Okay, the sort of boundaries are sort of here. You can mention this part is in Karnataka, there's another small part here, and there's a small portion here which is in Maharashtra. The remaining of it, the bulk of it is in Goa. And in some way it's understandable why the Mhadei is called Mother. Because we're all children of the Mhadei, it covers so much of Goa. Okay. And let's have a different view of it. This is maybe not very clear, but this is showing us an elevation model. The view is taken. This is the mouth of the Mandavi. This is the island of Divar. Just to orient ourselves, this Panjim is somewhere here, and the Mhadei goes up, and it is born up there in the Ghats. It's pretty much born in the clouds. The elevation, which is about, it's 940 meters is where it gets its various river systems over there that give birth to the Mhadei. When it comes to Goa, the elevation dips to about 800 meters above sea level, and then around Panjim, etc., it touches sea level. So it's an incredible kind of, the birth of the Mhadei has multiple sources, and it's in those Ghats. Okay, this is something that also gives us a different perspective about the Mhadei. Now, coming to probably the most controversial part. What is this controversy? What's this issue about? And the issue is many diversions. The map is probably not very clear, but there are about 5 different diversions that are sort of intended. And the key being that you're taking a west flowing, the Mhadei is a west flowing river draining into the Arabian Sea. But the plan, there's Karnataka, and there's also an irrigation, there's also a damming project, diversion project by Maharashtra. But the Karnataka plan is very simple. It is to connect it to the Malaprabha, which is an east flowing river. Take the water out of the Mhadei, or from the sources of different parts of the Mhadei, and connect them to the Malaprabha, which is a east flowing river. And basically there are two major ones. One is called the Bandura diversion and the other one is the Kalasa Nala diversion. And all of these ancillary projects, except this one over here, which falls in Maharashtra, are all basically excavating different river systems that connect to the Mhadei and diverting water into the Malaprabha. Maybe it becomes clearer here on this image. So this is the Bandura diversion, this is the Kalasa diversion, and in here are about three different diversion projects, all of which are taking water from this west flowing Mhadei river, connecting it to the Malaprabha, which is somewhere over here. And this one also, this is the Bandura project, which is reversing the flow and connecting it back to the Malaprabha and feeding that. There is another project, which is the Viridi project, which is by Maharashtra. Okay. Now, according to the tribunal, the breakup is something like this. Karnataka gets to divert 3.90 TMC of water, and the Kalasa canal, that's the total amount. It's broken up into two. The Bandura canal here, this one gets about 2.18 TMC, that's a breakup, and the Kalasa canal is 1.72, which is this system over here. And there's a 0.5 TMC, which is allocated to Maharashtra for diversion. So this is, when we first began to look at it, you realize that it is not one damming project. It's a series of damming projects, and it gets even more intricate because if you actually go down to see the maps, there are so many different diversion systems that it's a complex kind of a diversion system. And there's also this aspect where you're taking water from a lower gradient and pumping it up to a higher gradient. Now, yes, okay. I want to now quickly come to some of the controversial or contradictory policies of the government of Goa. You wouldn't probably expect this here, but this is what research uncovers, and I think it is important that we look at it straightforwardly. And it raises questions for us as a state itself. In the first place, in the tribunal, it was learned that Goa in 1999 had a development plan for the Mhadei Basin, in which there were 61, and some documents say 62 diversion projects. This is the map of them. It's not very clear, it's an old document. So there are irrigation projects planned by Goa itself. How does this play out? And this was pointed out by Karnataka. And Karnataka actually went to the extent of showing the map itself was wrong. Problems with the map. Goa made a counter argument saying that Goa apparently is a water deficit region, and so we need those irrigation systems. I'm just stating this in very broad terms. The details are much finer, but I'm placing this up here, or we're placing this for us to consider. So we have our own irrigation projects. The second is something very controversial. Did various governments coming from 1989 to 2000, various chief ministers, irrigation ministers, actually say it's okay to divert it? And according to the tribunal's findings and the documents placed by Karnataka, they've actually gone on and placed letters on record saying at various points of time, I have the quotations over here, that there was almost an agreement, a tacit agreement. When these documents were placed on record, the government of Goa said these understandings between officials are not official, but they were written documents, that were placed. And there are documents that they recall from 1989, 1996, and even in 2000. Okay, various chief ministers, etc., and various letters are annexed in the tribunal proceedings, and they give us this indication. Few of us know of this, came across this topic. This is the second. The third is a controversy that is playing out right now. and that is regarding the tidal corridor. Here, before the tribunal, the government of Goa made such a series, verbatim we can give it to you, verbatim statements saying that the Mhadei is a tidal corridor, completely contradictory from what you are hearing today. Okay, and they have stated this in writing, they have stated this on affidavit. Okay, these are four, I've taken only 4 statements. It's an important corridor for tigers. I want to read this. There is evidence to show that tigers in Goa, this is the best statement, because it completely contradicts our great forest minister. Here the government of Goa says there is evidence to show that tigers in Goa are not merely transient animals, but are a resident population. He has recently gone on record to say that tigers are, does anyone recall? Yes. They are kind of like tourists in Goa. Yeah. And they go on to say where the tigers have been spotted, etc. Okay. Then they go on to say something even more interesting, that the protected areas, Mhadei, etc., are contiguous forests that connect Karnataka to Maharashtra to the Sindhudurg area and therefore can complete that corridor, and therefore it is vital for us to save this. They go on to details, and there are details and details. I've just taken a few excerpts. And now, what do we get? Now we get Forest Minister himself and wife making statements that we will oppose the High Court order of tigers. They question even whether these tigers are really resident. When actually the whole reason why Goa went into this, declaring it as a tiger corridor, was after the killing of 4 tigers in Goa, in the Mhadei itself. And now the Mhadei, after the CEC report, which is just placed the last 2 weeks, they have left out the Mhadei, and they said it will come in phase 2. Mhadei and Bhagwan Mahadev, apparently because of settlements which are fudged figures, because Goa Foundation has also placed an affidavit with very varying figures. The government of Goa said that 1 lakh, it seems, Goans live in poor reserves. Okay. So the CEC has tried to broker a middle ground by saying that in phase 2 of this tiger corridor, we'll consider the Mhadei. So the Mhadei, this corridor is left out, only the lower parts of Goa are marked as tiger corridor in phase 1. This of course is being challenged in the Supreme Court. Now, it gets even more interesting, another controversy. The Forest Department has become a development department now, and they have a corporation, and the corporation has ecotourism projects now. We have seen in Tirakal, for instance, what ecotourism means. In an entire village goes, forest canopy is changed overnight to suit the government. We've seen this across Goa. So here in Surla, there are 2. One is in Bhagwan Mahadev. So there are 2 cases in the High Court now. And there is in the core of the Mhadei Wildlife Sanctuary, there is this project coming. It has been stayed, thankfully, because the High Court was upset that the government of Goa did not adhere to its orders, previous orders. So there is another one now. So this is an ecotourism project. So after making all of these arguments, we go and we say, and this ecotourism project is going to be, it sounds nice, ecotourism, but it is jointly developed by Fomentos, according to the Goa Foundation petition, and by the Taj Group. So I wonder how many of us will be able to enjoy what this is ecotourism. And tiger spottings are maximum in this area, have been maximum in this area from the government's own initiative.
What I'm going to say, in a sense, precedes what Solano has said and follows up from what Solano has said, because sequences, like the flow of the river, is never quite linear. Just to give you a backdrop to the project. The project is basically began with an invitation from the British Academy. It's important for us to acknowledge the British Academy, inviting us to be part of a global consortium of research under the rubric Times of a Just Transition. There are research groups from New Zealand, Australia, Colombia, South Africa, Sweden, UK, Canada, and India. So we, in a sense, represent all of Asia. When we started working on the project, we had proposed to the British Academy that we would just take up a small aspect, which is the controversy relating to the diversion, because that was very much in the public domain, and we were late to the debate. So we thought we'd just work on the interstate tribunal, water dispute tribunal. We thought we would look at interstate federal issues, something easy for political scientists to do. But as we got more involved in the discussion, we realized that we were onto something which was much larger than the initial framing. We realized this is important, it's how our understanding of the river has changed, and we'd like to share that with you because I think it's important that new audiences also begin to look at the river differently. So it began as a body of water under dispute, that I've already said. As we began to look at that, the river began to grow as an ecosystem, especially in the Ghat area. We began to understand that the river is nurturing a vast biodiversity of plant, animal life, reptiles, amphibians, whatever. There's a huge ecosystem, and it's in fact regarded as a biodiversity hotspot. So we began to see the river not just as a body of water which is moving and distributed between Maharashtra, Karnataka and Goa, but as an ecosystem which is performing very, very important ecosystem services, right? Including the production of biodiversity. As we researched that further, we began to see it as a watershed, the term that Solano has used. That means not just in terms of ecosystem services, but in terms of agriculture, tourism, industry, etc. So the river began to open up, and then finally, and this is important, this is particularly important for a diverse community such as this, we began to see the river as a commons. I use the term commons because this is an important term in global history, and it in a sense represents an area of dispute between regimes and people. As a commons, that means people have rights to the commons. People have rights which they are losing out because the commons is being, and key word is the commons are being enclosed. So the river is being enclosed, the commons are being enclosed. So we began to see the river as a body of water, an ecosystem, a watershed, and a commons. And finally, we began to see the river as a resource which is intergenerational. We are only its most recent custodians. We are looking after the river for generations still to come. We have received the river from generations that have gone past. So this is the background. We started our research project, and we had an ambition. We said, let us do something different because we entered the debate late. Let us do something that is not present. So we decided to set ourselves 4 goals. One is to create a knowledge community that we grandly called an epistemic community on the Mhadei. A group of scholars from different dimensions, from geology, history, law, economics, political science, sociology, public relations, whatever. So we created an epistemic community. And over the last 2 years, we have been debating the different perspectives on the river. This is important because what you get in the media is a very linear, very one-dimensional, maybe a 2-dimensional understanding. We have created a multi-dimensional understanding of the river. And that has emerged in the book. So the second ambition, first was to create a community. The second is to publish a book of these multiple perspectives. This we have already done, and that book is available for sale. And we wanted that book to be locally available, not publish it in London or where British Academies or Delhi so that it gets priced out, but we wanted to publish it with one of the local publishers, and we wanted it to be a world-class publication, all of which I think we can proudly say has happened. The third is to make a documentary, that in addition to people who belong to the academic world and the intellectual world who would be reading the book, we wanted to be able to, some of these issues that emerged in the research, we wanted it to reach the communities beyond the academic world. So we made a film, and a film with some of these issues are now available, as you will see. And finally, we decided that we need to create a digital platform that will live beyond the research. The project is over, the project is officially over by the end of this year, but we have created a website, where a lot of this is available for free public access. We have bought a website, it's available for 3 years. You can go there, anyone can go there, download the film, download the book, download the chapters, download the articles you research. You can do it at your own leisure, you can circulate it, you can send it to your epistemic communities in Karnataka, in Colombia, wherever. It is now a global resource. Okay, so I can probably say at this point that we have achieved our 4 goals. Now, in this research, and this is important, if at all there's one takeaway from our presentation, it is that when we look at the Mhadei, Solano has given you a very important viewing of the current controversy. We discovered that there are at least 12 ways with which we can look at the river, and these are complementary, these are not conflictual. For example, you'll find that in the book, so I'm not going to go through all those ways. For example, the river is a memory archive. If you go to the river and you talk to people in the vicinity of the river, communities, etc., how do you remember the river? Lovely stories have emerged. And we have a chapter on that. The river is when I was a child and I finished my SSC, I came home, I was very happy that I finished my SSC exam, I threw all my books in the river. One person tells us. And then when the results came, I had failed, so I needed those textbooks. So somebody else is telling you that when I was a small boy, I was quite stout and stubby, so whenever the women went out in their canoes to fish, they used to call me, come and sit in the front of the river, because I gave stability to the boat. So you see, there's a huge number of stories that the river gives you, from childhood to women to when it's in flood, when we went fishing. The river is a memory archive, and we need to capture that archive. The river is a provider of ecosystem services. I mean, this is something which none of our policy community in Goa takes seriously. The river gives you clean air. The river gives you clean water. There are 16 services which a river provides. Even the flooding of the river is important. I went to the island of Shorao recently, and I was sitting at a restaurant by the river's bank. And the villager was telling me that, you know what has happened? With all this sand mining which is allowed, the river is not flooding. As a result of not flooding, all the marshlands, which used to be the spawning grounds of fish, are not. So suddenly the river is a resource that we have to understand. So there are 16 services. Again, we have highlighted this, drawn from WWF on what the river provides. Then the politics of institutions Solano has told you, and 2 other ones. There are 12 such dimensions of the river which I would urge you to look at if you buy the book. But the river is a sewage sink. This is a tragedy. I go for a walk very often along the Kampal, and it ends at the Santi-Nala. I mean, it is tragic. We do a huge amount of urbanization. We're talking about building this fancy, and top builders have come from all over the country. Where is the sewage going? Where is the sewage going from the casinos? Read the reports of the NIO about the increased BOD. Exactly. Thank you. And it's beginning to impact our beaches. We have no idea that we are swimming in perhaps toxic water. And our fish. Yeah. The river is a source of microplastics. This our NIO student, so that means that fish that we are getting is probably got microplastics in it which we are eating. So the river is a sewage sink. Now, so this is what we have covered. So let us also say something about an agenda for the future, because what I've said to you just now is there in the book. What I've said to you just now you can read. But I also want to use this occasion to tell you about how we should take the debate forward. Our fear is that it's one of those things which I don't even want to say, because I may seed the government with an idea which they may not have. But I'm presenting it to you as an alert. Because we are so rich in freshwater resources, 7 big rivers, Goa may become a site for data centers. And that is environmentally hugely damaging. Today, once a data center comes up, like it's coming up in Visakhapatnam, 3 days ago, Google, Microsoft and Amazon have committed themselves to investing something like 20 crores, 15 crores, 17 crores, in excess of billion dollars. If a data center comes up in work, we're finished. Our water resources are finished. Our energy resources are finished. Because what comes with it's not just a technology. And the government will give you a fantastic spin. Oh, this is great. We are bringing high technology industries. High technology industries will give employment to 300 people. But what you will lose is a huge ecosystem. Right? So data centers are important. We must build up a consciousness of the river, of not citing any polluting industries along the river. I mean, you go to Amona, there's a huge steel plant. Why should a steel plant come up on a river, on a beautiful river? It's been there for 30, 40 years. You go to Kolwale, there's a metal processing factory. It used to be Binani zinc, now it's called something else. Rivers across the world are deeply troubled by pollution. Just go to Google, type out rivers in the UK. The top issue in UK is pollution of the rivers. All their rivers are dying. Everybody talks about when I was a child I used to go swimming in the water. Now I dare not go swimming because look at the quality of the water. Goa has not reached that point. Let us not reach that point. Let us now be alert that if we allow this pattern of industrialization and development to take place, we will go where UK was 30 years ago. And then we will start fighting, no, clean up our rivers. Our rivers are fairly clean. Let's not make sure they first become dirty, then create a movement to clean them up. So, we need to do two things for the future, and I'll conclude on this. I mean, there's lots more to be said. One is, we need to build up our knowledge of the river. We need to engage colleges along the river to study the changing water quality. Simple. Study, say, take 5 points along the river. Any graduate student can do this. You don't need to be a PhD in chemistry. 6 points along the river. Take a reading in January, take a reading in April, take a reading in June, take a reading in October, and see the changing quality of the river. See the impact of sand mining. See the services that mangroves give to the fish population in Goa. See, this is something that nobody has done. I don't know if people have done it, but it's not well discussed. The impact of mining on our freshwater resources. I mean, we keep talking of public health having got worse. Number of cancer cases has gone up, etc. Has anybody studied whether there is a link between the use of heavy metals in the mining industry and our water? Because all our mining dumps are on the water's edge. So we need to build up scientific knowledge about the river through connection with colleges, different departments, geology, chemistry, botany, zoology. We need to build up scientific knowledge by using experts who are resident in Goa, like Kerala did when they developed their 9th plan. There are experts who are working on reptiles in the sea, so let us build up this knowledge through individual initiative, through group initiative, through institutional initiative, but let us build up this knowledge so that when government starts putting 61 projects on the river, we can say this is going to be the impact of all your projects. Our book does that. Our book has now reached the assembly, and hopefully it will be debated by the Mhadei committee. That's one body of knowledge. The second body of knowledge we must do, and we must document, and I want to end on that, is we must create knowledge about the cultural relationship to the river. The river is not just a body of water. It was there before human beings arrived on the western coast, and it will be there after we've gone, because it's a product of the cycle of monsoons. Monsoons come, they drop their precipitation on the Western Ghats gets eroded. We have understood the river through 4 time frames. Geological time, before human beings appeared. Ecological time, when animals and reptiles and forests appeared. Cultural time, when we created an entire calendar around the river. I mean, Nariyal Purnima is not just an odd thing, it is a time when you are allowed to do fishing. Like you offered the river at coconut and the river says, okay, now you can fish. There are sections in the river where it's called sacred pools, where there are fish, marshy fish, again in our book, where nobody is allowed to fish. You're not allowed to take the fish out of the river. That if you want to draw on the resource of the river, you have to ask the deity that is looking after the sacred pool, please allow me one fish and I will whatever do this, that is there. So there are sacred pools, like sacred groves in the forest, sacred pools in the river. So we need to build up a cultural character because we don't know our river. And I'm saying this very seriously as somebody who's been in the academy for 40 years. The knowledge that we give you in classrooms, that we write about in articles, is knowledge that reproduces perspectives of the world which come from the West. And these perspectives don't valorize sacred pools, sacred groves, don't valorize a way of looking at the river that we have, that has been part of our ecosystem. I mean, our river, the Mhadei, has sections of the forest where the roots are inverted. And they have been inverted over land for hundreds of years. Why? Because that may have been a mangrove at some period of time. We don't know this. Somebody who knows, who lives in the area, told us that we got a picture in our film. So please help us and help Goa. I mean, this is not just 3 of us or 5 of us or 19 of us writing about the river. It belongs to all of us. And unless the 2 people, in fact, even if there are 2 people who get inspired by today's presentation and go away saying we will join the thing, that will be a great contribution. Thank you.
I have to thank Peter and Solano for having arm-twisted me and got me into the community. I'm a historian by training, so what I will do today is to try and tell you how I got interested in the project and also perhaps make a pitch for public history as a way of knowing our environment and our responsibility to the environment more seriously. So that's really what I'm going to do. So when I was first approached by Peter for participating in this project as an observer, I was not quite sure what I was going to bring to the table. So Peter then said that the epistemic community, the community of scholars that he wanted to build, would do with a historian, and that I could bring a historical perspective on the river and also on the controversy surrounding it. So not just to look at something in the present, but to use the present to go past forward, if you will. So it sort of got me thinking and sort of reading generally about how historians have studied rivers, and more importantly, how a historical view can actually be very valuable to social understanding. It's not that it happened in the past and we forget about it and it's one more event and episode to be remembered and regurgitated for an exam, but actually a view that sensitizes us to the present. So I felt that yes, our common project, whether we are historians, anthropologists, biologists, whatever, is after all how a social world is organized, whether it's around a river, whether it's a hill, whether it's a plain. So from that vantage point, I thought any conversation between history and law, between history and politics, between history and biology, all other fields could be deeply productive. So that really got me interested, so I said yes. And then I decided to pick something that I could write about substantively. And so I thought I'd write about built space, about infrastructure on the river. It's something that we are all concerned with. We are all alarmed at infrastructural expansion, and yet I felt that we also need to understand infrastructure in many ways on the river, some which are older, some which have a commons collective perspective, some which have a more individualist predatory perspective. So I would say that there is a contrast between cousin infrastructure on the river and casinos on the river. So I thought, let me think a little bit more about infrastructure and whether I could use this as a lens to understanding the river. Of course, as a historian, I'm very conscious of using material evidence to be able to say what I do. So I thought it was useful for me to think about something substantive around which things have been written, and I could use this as a lens to understanding the river and to perhaps dive into the importance of history as a practice for understanding the contemporary. I actually do think that to understand the world in which we live in today, which we struggle against, I think we really need to go a little bit into the past. You know, it's like an archaeological excavation of something that happened, which gives us some sort of clues to why we find ourselves in the mess that we are in today. I'm not saying it gives us lessons, but it certainly alerts us to finding sort of solutions to what we are going through today. So as a practicing historian for more than 3 decades, I've been teaching now for 38 years, I do feel that history gives us a real feel about the unfolding of action, whether it's human, whether it's geological, or whether, you know, it's social. So in other words, I feel that as a historian, one has a perspective on time. And given that the project was about times of a just transition, I thought temporality was something which we need to really understand. And I felt that as a historian, I could be mindful of what time does. Time is inevitable. We accept that time happens. Events have happened in the past. There's no going away from the event that happened. We can interpret it differently, but the event has happened. So I thought we could approach the river from this temporal perspective, and then how would I write it? So I decided that I would write about the history of the river from 2 kinds of temporal perspectives. One would be that of an important political event that came into this particular state, which is the arrival of the Portuguese, the way they envisaged the river, the way they imagined the river, the way they bounded the river, and the way they extracted resources from the river, what kind of consequences did that have on the river. And I also thought that I could think a little bit about how older establishments thought about the river. The Portuguese were not the first to think about the river as a resource, nor were they the last. There were others who thought about the river in different ways, and I thought by writing about infrastructure over time, I could think a little bit differently, if you will, about the time spent on the river. Now I do this in the chapter that you will find in the book, but I really felt that to understand different kinds of time scales on the river, it would be useful for me to pick up one historical episode, which was the coming of the Portuguese. I do accept, as a student of history, that time is heterogeneous. Time happens at multiple levels to multiple communities very differently. We all experience time quite differently, so to homogenize it also would be kind of difficult. So let me then illustrate this, and then perhaps we could reflect together on why such an approach, by looking at 2 time scales, would be useful for engaging with the present. The present, of course, being caught in the middle of a serious controversy about river sharing. How do sides present their pitch for river sharing? What is fair? What is not? Are we pitting livelihood versus environment? Is that pitting actually anomalous? Because environment is livelihood. So I think to get a sense of that, I thought let us look at a historical perspective on both settlements in the river, but also on disputes in the river. Because as I said, they are not necessarily new. So I decided then to look at the Portuguese, and I thought I would look at how they imagined the river, how they saw it as a valuable military resource, how they invested in particular kinds of infrastructure, particularly forts. I was interested in fortifications. I was interested in Fort Aguada, the Reis de Mongos, but that's part of a larger cluster of infrastructural activities that happened. And then I thought I could sort of compare this, not provocatively, but compare this with another kind of infrastructure, which is building of the cousins in the river, which is sort of moving more slowly in temporal terms. Of course we have a tendency to say these were times immemorial. As a historian, I don't believe in anything immemorial. I think everybody changes, everything changes, but there's a certain rhythm to change, and because something is collectively built and is dependent on a particular kind of tidal river management, it is less susceptible to that sort of dramatic rupture for a longer period of time. They do go. But I thought this would be a useful way of comparing and contrasting this kind of monumental military and civic building by the Portuguese with a sort of slower engineering and agrarian engineering of river management to maintain pisciculture and paddy culture more logically, more slowly. So by doing this, I did find, to my surprise, you discover things when you read it, and how the Portuguese vision of the river as central to looking after their commercial interests was actually replicated by other powers along the coast. Not necessarily in Goa, but the river then suddenly becomes, the river and access to the sea suddenly becomes more important for coastal powers than they ever did before. So in many ways, political imagination, social imagination changes with the coming of the Portuguese, and I wanted to document this. As I said, I then contrasted with cousin management, which went through a very different rhythm of change until the late 19th, mid-20th century, when that was also badly disrupted, a very different kind of lobby emerging in the cousin, and of course the relationship with the environment, with the river, with ecological sustainability also changed. So the chapter really is a sort of attempt to understand how infrastructures in use and misuse can really create problems in the way in which we see them. From here, I move shortly in the chapter to the dispute, which of course many in the volume have done eloquently, and a foretaste of which Solano gave us in the introductory talk today. I really wanted to look at disputes about water sharing again from a historical perspective. After all, this is not the first time we have had a dispute. We've had disputes with other rivers. We've had disputes with the Sindhu. We've had disputes, think of the Faraka barrage in Bangladesh. We've had disputes with the Kaveri and the Krishna, and all of them are different. But there is a history of disputes around river water sharing, and that history has been mediated very much by certain contexts that have happened. So if you had a system, if you had a situation where you had a dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu in the colonial past, one was a princely state of Mysore, the other was a directly administered British rule, you had a very different set of resolutions. So I was curious about, I haven't still found it, I was really curious about how the governments in Goa, even before liberation and post-liberation, actually thought about river sharing and whether they've come into at all, or whether we've been sucked into the politics of federalism and the politics of tribunalization that have taken place today. So as a historian, I am continuously interested in what constitutes a particular context in which these disputes are fought out, and I try to do that by using a historical perspective to understand the present context. Of course, some things never change, unfortunately. Things like expertise is defined badly every time. You never quite know who is the expert, or whether at all we choose to value the advice of experts when it comes to any river water sharing. So I'd like to think that this book and the project is a first step in genuinely building a community that is able to impact some levels of policy making, so that academic culture and activism actually come together and converge. So I'll stop there.